Well, I'm going to start with, why don't you introduce yourself? I obviously know who you are. There might be some people watching this video going, who is this and what do you do?
I am Martin Luymes. I am the Vice President of Government Stakeholder Relations for HRAI. HRAI is the Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Institute of Canada.
Awesome. So I've been involved with HRAI indirectly for a very long time. My father is a gas fitter, is a member of HRAI. My uncle owned Ridler Supply, became Desco, obviously involved with HRAI. So known a lot about HRAI. I appreciate being invited to the Heat Pump Symposium. I think this Heat Pump Symposium is going to play a very important role in the industry. What were you hoping to get from this show today?
What we really hoped to do was to really make our membership aware of what we see as an inevitable, inexorable trend that's happening in the sector, which has mainly to do with climate action, decarbonization of homes and buildings. It's creating tremendous market opportunities for heat pumps. Obviously, lots of our members know about that. Certainly on the product side, the manufacturers are aware of the trends and the opportunities. But our sense is that a lot of contractors are either in denial or they're reluctant to change, they're reluctant to accept this trend, and really, more importantly, not really prepared to do what they need to do in their businesses to be prepared to seize the opportunity. So this day was really about education for the sector, talking more about heat pumps as opportunity than a threat to their business. And I think we accomplished that, though. I'd say we had a fantastic turnout. I think it was Victor or someone else said it earlier. We should have doubled the number here. We should have all the skeptics here. Because those are the people that really need to hear the message. Right? I think we had a lot of choir members here. You know what I mean?
Well, the two things that I like about it, and obviously 2 decades doing heat pumps and previous to that installing heat pumps with my father's company, I like that the audience that you have here from a speaker standpoint comes from a lot of different walks, right? Obviously, I'm a very technical, hands-on design guy. I enjoyed doing my presentation today. But you had people like Heather on the academic side that brings a very unique perspective. You had Doug from the builder side bringing a unique perspective. So when you guys put this event together, some thought clearly went into who should we bring together and why? So what was that process? How did you decide you wanted to have somebody like Heather and then throw me into the mix? Like, what was your thought process?
That's a good question. We actually had a little bit of an organizing committee. When this concept first came up, we thought, well, it's a pretty good idea. We'll see if there's interest in it. There was immediate interest from a number of people in being part of a committee to help organize it. And then when we started talking about who the speakers should be, we had another lineup of 8 or 10 people saying, we'll help you with that. We had no shortage of ideas. I'm going to say we probably had about 30 speaker recommendations, maybe more. And so then it really became a matter of being selective to fill the day with a breadth of topics that would satisfy all the different types of people that we hoped would show up. They didn't all show up in equal numbers and get quite as many ICI contractors as residential, not as many home builders as we'd hoped would come, or new home contractors. But we tried to have something for everybody. And also, you know, we tried to have a different so we had the policy panel, which just ended, you know, have a little bit of like what's government doing in this space at all levels of government. Our last session is going to be a bunch of people working in the business who have had success with heat pumps, like you guys have, and understand it, are comfortable with it, and are running profitable businesses. Really just to impart that message that this isn't, you know, risky business. It's not something that you really, you know, let's wait and see if it works for somebody else. You can jump in, both feet, and turn it into, and make that part of a successful business. We need people to see that, and we're going to show that by having 5 or 6, I think 7 panel members who have had success being in the heat pump space for a long time.
So I think it's really important that everybody understands that heat pumps are a new animal, and as you know, I do a lot of training. We talked off camera. We train a lot of people this year, and we're excited to do more. There's a lot of people in our industry that can certainly do heat pumps. There's a lot of gas fitters, a lot of plumbers that might have to just sort of rejig how they do things. I think that the key takeaways is that there's an education component that needs to come. Where do you see HRAI playing into that re-education, that retraining process over the coming year?
It's a good question.
And years.
We have lots of thoughts about the types of training that are needed. Turns out so does NRCan. We met with NRCan recently. They did some analysis and basically said, these are the things we believe industry personnel need to learn in order to be successful in installing and servicing heat pumps. Their data really didn't come from any empirical source. It was really just people thinking about it. We are actually proposing at HRAI, and we're asking Enercan to underwrite this, to do a gap analysis. And the study we're looking to do, which we've got a very warm response from them that we'll probably get this done, is to analyze the gap between, for a typical gas technician, you said it, who are the heat pump installers of tomorrow? They're gas technicians today for the most part.
Yeah.
We have tens of thousands of them.
Yeah.
And we need to move them along a learning curve to help them become successful heat pump installers.
Yeah.
What we don't know today with certainty is how big is the gap between what a competent gas technician can do with 20, 30 years of experience in the industry and what the industry is going to need of them as a successful heat pump installer. So the study we want to do is going to survey 100 such gas technicians and do a self-assessment. And out of that, we'll have a map or a document that will map out what the training needs are as expressed by technicians themselves. That becomes raw material for us to take to colleges, training providers, trade unions, whomever, to say, now you got to fill that order.
Yeah.
Right? This is the gap that we see. Who can do this? Who can fill this training need? And then roll that training out as quickly as possible. Our ask of government is to help do that research work, although we'll probably do it on our own if they give it a pass. More importantly, when the training is identified, when the gaps are identified and training's developed, might be you guys that do some of the training, that we have widespread access at at as low a cost as possible for technicians.
Right.
One thing we hear from the industry consistently is they're just too busy to take training.
Yeah.
Right? They might even identify that they need to have some training, but they can barely keep up with the demand that they're facing today. So,
sure.
At the very least, we have to make the training that they need available at a very low cost.
Yeah. I think what's important is that HRAI is in a much better position than anybody else to drive this forward. Because you're exactly right. The number one thing that people don't want to do for training is go and sit through training where they don't see the value proposition. And I can speak from experience. When I was still in the field, somebody say, hey, Mike, you're going to go spend half a day and do training with so-and-so. My immediate reaction to that was, it's going to be boring, it's not going to be of interest. And I think what's important is that HRAI and other associations that are in partnership with you are bringing the right trainers to the table.
Right.
Like, we do a lot of training and it's always packed. And the reality is, like you, our training is focused around valuing their time. So if you sort of had a wish list of what you would hope would happen, what changes would you like to see in the industry over the next, let's say, calendar year that can sort of empower the contractor, empower our industry, and start to fill some of these gaps?
Yeah, it's a good question. But I'm going to say, just to be clear, for HRAI, this is not about creating opportunities for HRAI training. We will play a role if there's an opportunity and we feel like we have a training program that fits a need.
Yep.
We'll rise to the occasion if there's demand and members tell us this is a direction they'd like us to take. It's very costly to develop training.
Yep.
So we're not going to go down that path unless we know there's a market need. I expect, to be honest, that the majority of training that the industry will need will have to be provided by the college system, by the existing trade schools, colleges across Ontario, really across the country. And I say that because the need is great.
Yeah.
And our capacity is pretty limited.
Right.
Like I said, we'll fill in where we can, and there's lots of private training providers who can do some of this work too, but most of it has to come through existing trades training channels.
Yeah.
So the college system, where a lot of that's happening today, provided that they see the opportunity and actually develop the appropriate programs, right? Like we can't just have them stick to, this is the way, if you want training on control systems or something along that line, you have to take this program that's going to take you out for 8 weeks.
Yeah. And
you might only really need that day and a half of training.
Yeah.
They need to compartmentalize training, make it available on an as-needed basis, based on this roadmap that we want to create through the gap analysis. We think that will point the way. What does a typical contractor need? In fact, I'll even add that the program that we're looking to use to do that assessment for technicians will also be a product that we can offer to the industry. Have your technicians go through this analysis, and the product will be a report that they have that says you need these 6 training courses or these 2, depending on the proficiencies you already have and what kind of where you'd like to end up. That's a really useful service.
Right.
And also then, this college, this private training provider, whomever, they have programs that you might want to access. That's a really good service to the industry, in our opinion, right? So, but there's work to do even to get us to that point, and we haven't gotten very far as yet.
So I know you don't want to toot your own horn, so I'm going to do it for you. So a great example I would give is what HRAI is doing with heat pumps currently. So HRAI sort of, I'm going to give it my spin, looked at the heat pump industry from a geothermal standpoint and went, how do we enhance this? Not that there's anything wrong with that, and you partnered up with a group called IGSPA, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a great example where HRAI brings what they're good with and brings IGSPA to the table, and IGSPA indirectly brings people like me to the table, right, where we can engage and do that. So we talked a little bit earlier, one of the disconnects that I see, and I think you'll agree with me, is that there is a little bit of disconnect on what is being taught, not by anybody's fault, that we're teaching things that aren't very relevant. And the other thing is I think we're catching them too late. And so the discussion you and I had before we sat down in front of the camera is high school students.
Yes.
So my son is in 11th grade. He's in the trade right now, only because dad said, hey, there's an opportunity for you in the trade. There is a misconception from when I was still in the field to where I am now that trades don't pay well, it's dirty work, it's unpleasant work. The reality is we need to capture those high school students, and the reality is that I don't think there's an association other than HRAI and some of the sister organizations, CIPH or whatever they may be, to get with the high school students. And really my dream presentation, as we discussed, would be to go into a high school and have that discussion firsthand of this is a career. And I think HRAI is really important in that.
Well, we do commend the Ontario government for the announcement they made last week on this new mandatory course that will be offered.
Great announcement.
Grade 9 and 10, that will introduce every high school student, mandatory course for everybody, to talk about technical training options.
Yeah.
To just give them a window into what the opportunities are that don't include necessarily university or other traditional paths that they might want to think about. So we think that's a great thing. We've also, in commenting on this with the government, we also suggested there needs to be follow through on that.
Yeah.
It can't just be a one and done. You know, it's got to be like, okay, I think I'm interested in being an electrician or whatever.
Yeah.
There needs to be follow through. There needs to be, you need to point them to opportunities that might exist working with the industry or more advanced courses right in high school.
Yeah.
So they are looking at that. There is an opportunity now that kids can leave high school at grade 11
Yep.
and start an apprenticeship and have some of their apprenticeship credits recognized as course equivalents for high school, so they complete their high school diploma. That's all good progress in our view. We also believe and have recommended to the Ministry of Education in Ontario and elsewhere, but in a focused way in Ontario, that all of the curriculum should have better references to trades. So when you're talking in the science curriculum, in physics, in chemistry, why not use examples from our industry as concrete case studies or examples of how, about chemistry, right? Thinking about refrigerants. In physics, we could talk about the refrigeration cycle as a really clear example of certain principles of physics. We need to have that recognition right in the curriculum so people say, okay, now I know more about the industry, right? And that might be something I'd like to consider pursuing. So, but there's lots of good developments in that area. I'd like to say we've had a bit of a hand in advocating for that, but there's a lot more that needs to be done.
You make a great comment. This is really
starting to point the direction, but not really showing them the pathway to get.
Yeah, but you make a great comment I never thought about, and as somebody who went through this, the only reason I ended up in this industry is my dad.
Right.
And my son is now faced with the same thing, and as much as we both value that, I think it's important that kids organically get that information. You make a great comment. Yeah. Every single day I'll be calculating flow velocities, Reynolds numbers, whatever. Had I have sat through a math class in high school where it wasn't so focused on, if you're going to be an engineer or a programmer, you need to know this. Well, the reality is if you're going to be a gas fitter, a plumber, whatever you're going to be, there's a place for that math, and I never thought of organically plugging that in. The other thing that I'd like to get your feedback on, and because I know it worked well for me, my career success came from mentors. It was one thing to be in the field and learn, but meeting people like Grant Blackmore, Gord Cook, like at the time I didn't know who these people were. Now I realize the value of them investing in me. And so to me, I think the one thing that's missing, especially at the high school level, and I mean no disrespect to any high school teachers, but you almost need to have a liaison that acts as a mentor. What happens when that guy or girl wants to reach out to somebody? They can't get a Martin or a Michael on the phone, and I go, maybe one of us needs to make ourselves available or make people available in a mentorship role.
Well, in my view, the best mentor is the mentor for an apprentice, right? And I'm going to say we have a challenge in our industry that we don't have enough, especially on the non-union side. We have unionized contractors in the organized sector that do a great job, and the union halls, which have been well funded and have really well established programs, are doing a great job. So no disrespect to them. But there's lots of other people on the non-union side, mainly in the residential side of the business, smaller family businesses, who aren't really very sophisticated in how they take on apprentices.
That's where I came from.
A lot of them don't really
business,
understand how the apprenticeship system works. So we're kind of coming to that realization not long ago. We agreed at HRAI that we need to work with government to do a better job of educating small business owners about how to become mentors.
Yeah.
Just to make that part of their business practice. You want to solve your own labor issues? Become a really great mentor, take on apprentices, understand how the system works, and what we'd really like to do is create a service that will help those small businesses to access the apprenticeship system.
Yeah.
Because mentoring is critical, but mentoring and apprenticeship, that's well established, ensconced into the trades training system, but too many of our members don't really take full advantage of it.
Yeah.
They're more likely to let someone else do it and pick off an employee when they need it, right? There's a lot of that kind of cannibalization going on in the industry, and that's just the marketplace, the way it works. But we'd rather a larger percentage of the industry invest in apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And that means really learning how to do it.
Yep.
So how do you find those mentors? Let's teach them how to become mentors, right?
I think the key thing is people need to ask questions, right? Like engage at a younger level. Like college is great. Get them while they're going into high school, engage with them. And I guess anybody who's watching this video, the key thing is reach out to HRAI, ask the questions, see how you can get engaged.
Right.
So, well, I appreciate your time.
My pleasure, Mike.